is like some salve for their psyche that's going to help them next year. Like, I don't really think that's the case either. I think what I come down to is like, you know, there's so many, like the tanking philosophy relies on a couple assumptions. Number one is that, you know, as a rule, the number 5 pick is better than the number 9 pick or the number 15 pick. And again, on the surface, obviously, right, you're going to get a better slotted player. But I just like the NFL draft is such a crapshoot. Like, historically, have all 10 picks been better than 19 picks, right? Like, and so, and the other piece that you're really relying on there is that the GM is going to make the right pick at either of those selections, right? And so there's a lot of kind of assumptions that go into that like I'm not sure totally are satisfied by the Jets, right? Like, we have rooted for better picks in the past, and we've made bad picks, and we've made good picks, and other teams make bad picks and good picks. And so at the end of the day, like, as a fan of an NFL team, you only get 17 of these a year, sometimes more, but not for us in a very long time, right? For the last 11, 12 years, we only get 17 of these a year. And so I don't want to sit there and wish to lose, right? Like, that's what it comes down to me is like, life is short. Being a fan is about rooting for wins. And I get that we all want long-term success. We do. But I'm just not necessarily sure that in a lost season, moving your draft pick by 1 or 2 slots really affects it that much, right? At the end of the day, the GM's got to make the right pick in the slot. If the guy he wants to get is a little higher, you got to move him up and go up and get him. Or maybe you slide down a little bit and you pick the guy that you've identified later in the round, right? Like, there are ways to build teams without tanking. And like, for as much as the tank talk has kind of infiltrated every sport at this point, like, has it really worked anywhere? Like, has Philly, the 76ers, like, have they won anything? They haven't, right? Like, they built a team, yeah, but have they won anything? No. So like, I can't get with the tanking equals long-term success. That's where the whole thing falls apart for me. I understand maybe it increases chances, it increases likelihoods, all those things, but like, it doesn't equal long-term success to me. And there aren't enough football games in a season for me to give any up. And so, like, I like to see him win. I get where everybody else is coming from, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from, especially from the draft is a crapshoot angle too. Like, it like clearly is, and every year I've been on the other side of the business working for NFL Network, and I know how it works. Like, they are going to artificially hype up like quarterbacks and offensive stud players to make the draft seem like a cooler thing to watch on TV. Happens every year, and like these quarterbacks that get drafted higher and higher because of the lack of supply and demand, like, they're being marketed as these like the word generational talent gets used fucking every year.
Yeah.
It's the most insane thing of all time. You can't be a generational talent if it's something that comes up every single year. At the same time, like, the higher you pick in the draft, the more players you have available to pick from. Yeah, do you need to nail the pick? Absolutely. But like, if you want a quarterback in this draft, like, I shouldn't say if you want a quarterback, but if you want either Drake May or Caleb Williams in this draft, you have to have a top 2 pick. Because if you don't have the top 2 pick and that team picking 2 doesn't want Drake May or Caleb Williams, they're going to trade that pick to a team that does. And so, like, in order to have the option to get one of those players, you need to have that pick. And so that is pretty much true throughout the draft at like different tiers. Like, if you want a wide receiver, there is going to be a cutoff point where, like, and I get that you will be able to find these players later. It's just harder. And so I think at this point, like, I'm all for rooting for the success of the Jets, but I understand that it is a crapshoot. I'm just hoping that they have better odds in the crapshoot, because throughout the Joe Douglas drafts, like, obviously the Zach pick, we'll talk about Zach's performance today, but obviously he hasn't been what we all expected when he was drafted number 2 overall, or hoped when we drafted him number 2 overall. Besides that, it's a lot of Joe Douglas early round picks that have been his like cornerstones, like his best draft was when he had all of his picks inside the top 170. And so, especially if he's going to be the guy coming back next year, I'm going to be rooting for him to have as many high picks as possible, because I think that makes it less likely for him to fuck it up. Anyways, any final thoughts on the tanking debate before we move on to Zach Wilson's performance today?
No, I just like, again, with the draft, some of his best work has been moving around in the first round, coming back into the first round, coming back into the top of the second round, like shuffling around with those kind of not like the super premier glossy picks right up front, but like that, 20 to 50 range. He seems to do pretty well in there. He does well with trades, getting return on players that, you probably shouldn't have gotten 2 first round picks for. You definitely should have gotten 2 first round picks for Jamal Adams. You shouldn't have gotten what you got back for Darnold. And he's done a good job of turning those kind of, again, they're premier picks because they're in the first 4 rounds, but they're not that like top first round talent. Feel like he does well there. The other thing I just wanted to touch on was like the loser mentality thing. Like, I don't think fans having loser mentality affects anything, right? So I'm not going to like go and act like it's a big deal that we all have this loser mentality of wanting to lose and get better draft picks. But, right, like I don't want to be like that, right? And so like, it's like, we're sitting here, we both have the Chiefs game in front of us while we're recording this. And the first thing I thought of when you said that was like, do you think Chiefs fans root for losses at the end of a year so that they can increase their draft status by 2 or 3 picks? Like, I bet they don't. Right. And I'm not saying this has any bearing on anything. I just don't want to be like that anymore. It's been so long. I just want to play a playoff game. That's all it's about. I just want to play a playoff game. And, the one last thing is like, I said it on last week's pod. Wouldn't it be a shame if they do put some wins together at the end of the season here and they lit 3 games on fire in the middle of it all? Because we all know players don't tank. That's a front office job, right? Of kind of deactivating certain guys. And, if you really wanted to be tanking, I think you probably would have kept rolling Simeon or Rippin or, the other guy they cut, Boyle, out there. And I don't know. Sorry to give you a foggy answer on that one, but.
Well, so you brought up, the quarterbacks. Let's talk about Zach from today, as we anti-tanking Zach, as we'll call him. Put together, we were discussing this before we hit the record button. Do you think it was his greatest game as a Jet? What did you think of the Zach you saw today?
Yeah, I thought it was incredible. I think this is the top expectancy that you could have for Zach Wilson. Like, at his best, this is the best it will ever be. And what I mean by that is like explosive plays, eye-popping throws, a couple holy shit throws where he, either threw it across his body or threw it back across the field in the other direction. Or we were talking about one where he just put it in a perfect spot to Conklin, like right behind his helmet. Like he can make physically those eye-popping throws. And with that, you are going to get a few bad sacks, a scramble where he fumbles. We didn't see an interception today, but I feel like you probably mix an interception in there. Like, I feel like that's the top end of what you could expect from a pick like Zach Wilson. Like, threw for a bunch of yards, threw a couple touchdowns, and made some mistakes, right? And I think, it was a good like crystallization of what the Zach Wilson people, and I'm putting myself in that, like the truthers, so to speak. I think that was a good picture of what we were all saying like it could be. Like, that's the top end expectation, and you live with that if you're getting 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's okay. I'll take the fumble. I'll take the 3 bad sacks. I'll take one head scratching throw.